India development debate right here on ET Now. I'm Supriya Srinath, and joining me in Mumbai is my colleague and co-anchor Sandeep Gurumurthy. Now, ease of doing business in India just got a big boost. In a big-ticket labour reform, the government has now allowed fixed-term employment contracts across all sectors, which will allow companies to hire staff on the basis of their actual requirement. The move is in line with Finance Minister Arun Jaitley's budget announcement that the facility to hire fixed-term employees, which initially was available only to the apparel manufacturer sector, will be made part of the Uniform Labour Law. The government has also made sure that the big shift doesn't result in large-scale retrenchments, as the new law says no permanent staff can be forcefully moved to fixed-term employment.
Move comes as a big relief to India, especially those companies that are in cyclical businesses and hence needs flexibility in hiring. In fact, the rigid labour laws have often been cited by multinational corporations as the biggest hurdle in setting up shop in India. Experts say the big shift will create new job opportunities in companies with seasonal businesses. The critics of the new norms, however, say it will only help companies hire and fire at will, even as it creates huge imbalances in the job market. Remember, the new law has been enacted at a time when the government is facing a lot of flack for its failure to create quality jobs. The big ticket labour reform and its impact on the job market, that's our top story tonight on the India development debate. Joining us on the show is a really special panel. Pradeep Bhargav, Chairman CII National IR Committee with the industry view. Abhi Ghosh, a former bureaucrat and ILO official, comes in as an expert on labour-related matters. Narendra Taneja represents the BJP, Mohammad Khan of the Congress, and Brijesh Upadhyay, General Secretary of the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh. So in a sense, we've got all corners covered. We want to do a balanced debate here and give our viewers a cross-section of views really of society. But if I could get in the industry view first, really, because this is seen as a big boost for corporate India. Mr. Bhargav, help us understand how big a boost is this really going to be for corporate India at a time when manufacturing sector is seeing a bit of a lull, when we haven't seen the Make in India program kick off. How much of a boost will this really be for corporate India in terms of ease of doing business?
I personally believe it's going to give a big boost not only to the reality but to the sentiments. We all in corporate India talks about labour reforms. I think this is the first time we're going to reform our attitude towards labour. Let me elaborate what I mean. Historically, the organized sector like us had organized workforce, which is the unionized, and we had what is called an unorganized workforce, which includes, trainees and apprentices and badlis and great number called contract labor. This is going to substitute for us what we had to resort to contract workforce, which is really not the right thing to do, by getting people on our payrolls, giving them employment, and acknowledging flexibility that the business requires, and at the same time ensuring there is equitable treatment to the workforce. So answer to your question is, yes, it will bring certain dignity, equity in how you want to treat labor. It doesn't give you job security, but it gives you social security and dignity to labor and brings in a certain amount of confidence, flexibility to the employer. I believe it's not a baby step, it's a baby taking a big step. Yes, I say this because it's not going to solve the big problem of the unorganized sector, that is a separate debate, but it will certainly take care of the unorganized workforce in organized sector. And I personally believe it's the right step. Commend the government for doing it, and actually the pressure is on us in industry to ensure that we follow this in spirit and text, and we'll talk about it later. So I strongly commend and recommend, and we have been actually asking for it from Industry Association, including CII.
Right. Okay, Mr. Bhargav, I think you have put the nail on its, you've hit the nail on its head when you say the onus is on industry. You've been asking for this for a very long time, and the onus is now on you to create those jobs and to create that employment opportunity. But many believe that this also marks a shift in how the government is thinking about employment generation and the government's own employment strategy. And Mr. Ghosh, to you then, do you believe this marks the definitive shift in the government's employment strategy from job security to really job creation, and having taken a very decisive step like this?
Well, I think really it is a bit of a, how shall I say, much ado about something rather small. It may be something, but it is not that big ticket reform that we are looking at. So I think what has been done in terms of giving a little more flexibility to the employer is to allow a new classification of workers who are on fixed term employment and extending the apparel sector workers and to cover all workers in all sectors. So, to that extent some amount of flexibility and some amount of balance has been brought about, but the big ticket reform which we wanted to look at in terms of hiring and firing and the flexibility in terms of the Industrial Disputes Act, that remains to be done.
You're saying it's not enough, it's much ado about nothing. There's far more that needs to be done, and we will touch upon those, those reforms that are important as well, and hopefully the government will show the stomach to move on that. Let me get a view from the politicians on the panel. Narendra Taneja, how are you going to assuage these fears? Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh is affiliated to the RSS, the ideologue of your party as well, and they have raised concerns on the fact that this is going to, in a sense, formalize this whole, hire and fire is going to become a legalized rule in the labor sector. Those are very strong charges being made. So it's not just the left-leaning unions, but even the RSS-backed trade unions that are opposing this move. How are you going to assuage fears that this won't lead to voluntary hire and fire of employees? Narendra Taneja.
No, as far as you see, Mazdoor Sangh is concerned, we will have discussions with them. We are part of the family, and but there is inner family democracy, so they are entitled to their views, and the government has taken this step, and we'll have consultations with them and convince them. As you know, Bharatiya Janata Party is the party of the poor, of the farmer, Kisan, is the party of the workers, the Mazdoor. I mean, that's and we believe this step will only lead to more employment, more jobs. More job opportunity for the poor, for the farmers, for the workers, and for our youth. So that's the whole idea. At the same time, we have made sure that those who have got a regular job, that's all well protected, but it will lead to a new culture altogether. And over a period of time, people will understand that, actually this initiative is only good for them, because there are more job opportunities, there are much better culture. Those who are hard-working people, they will get rewarded. And at the same time, we have coming out with a number of schemes in terms of social, including Ayushman Bharat and etc. So social security will be available to all those people. So we are basically recasting the whole thing. It's not only this, we single this out as a different matter, but we're recasting the entire kind of architecture, so that workers, the poor workers, the Mazdoors and Kisan and those underprivileged are very well protected. Let's not forget one thing, that what is the whole idea behind this? Idea is basically that on the one hand, people, those who are seeking ease of business, they have ease of business, but at the same time, those seeking ease of life, they have ease of life. Because so they can change the job and they can go to another job and they can ask for better money if they've got better skills in the process of the short-term employment. And let's not forget one thing, if you are a good worker, who would let you go? I mean, it's so difficult to find good people, good workers, good employees. So if you are good, I mean, chances are probably they will never let you go. And you will be in a position after one term expire, you probably will be in a position to renegotiate it for better terms, for better returns for you and your future. So, I mean, there are different ways. It's like, you can look at it as a bottle half empty, you look at bottle half full. So it depends on how you're looking at it. But as I said, that our approach is very simple: to create more job opportunities, to build a new culture, and at the same time to protect the workers. That is absolutely a must for us, as I said, we are the party of the workers, we are the party of the farmers, and the party of the poor. So that's our overall approach. And we believe that this is going to help us expand the economy, and in many ways modernize the economy.
I'm sorry, I'll have to cut you short there. Mr. Taneja, I have to cut you short there. Mr. Taneja, I have to cut you short there. You've laid your intent. You've said you don't just want to create jobs, you also want to ensure job security. We lost that line with Mr. Upadhyay, and whenever he's back, I'm going to go back and ask him, does that address his concerns? But Mohammad Khan, I have a question for the Congress party. I want to understand what your stance on this particular issue is. My own understanding is that you're opposing this move. And that very stance perplexes me, it confuses me.
You are right.
Because in the economic resolution that was released by the Congress party in the plenary session, you want to unleash the animal spirits of the private sector. If you want to do that, how do you oppose this move? I mean, how can you oppose this move?
Absolutely.
I'll explain. Whenever an organization exceeds 20 people in size, certain benefits accrue to the individuals employed therein. For example, labor law regulations provide all sorts of health benefits. They provide deposits towards your provident fund, and they provide for additional allowances which you wouldn't otherwise be entitled to. These laws have existed for almost 60 years for good reason. Trade unions have fought hard for them because of the exact reason that Mr. Taneja was talking about. It doesn't matter if you're a good or a hard worker. You are subject to the whims and caprices of your employer. If the employer wishes to pack up and leave overnight, it doesn't matter how good a worker you are. Now, tell me something. I was going through the text of this amendment. What worries us is this. I am now free to let a person go without giving him notice, without giving him the benefits of provident fund or health benefits. Yes, I am entitled to give him a living wage which is at par with industry standards. That is the only saving grace here. But if I want, I can let him go in 3 months with a 2-week notice. Till now, this did not exist. As one of your panelists very rightly pointed out, it existed only in the apparel sector, and with very good reason, because we saw in places like Mysore and Bengal, where sarees are made, that there's a very established industry where workers move in and move out and move in and move out. This doesn't apply ipso facto to all other sectors. This 1946 law is now being amended, and we ask the question, why have you not consulted any trade unions on this? Why have you not consulted any workers groups on this? There are so many of them out there. This draft was not put out in the public domain for consultation. Please, if I am wrong, Mr. Taneja should correct me and tell me if they have received comments. The very fact that the RSS itself is opposing these reforms speaks volumes. The truth is, this puts the the worker entirely at the mercy of the capitalist. And that's fine. That's there's no harm. It's not a bad thing to be a capitalist.
Right.
But our labour laws exist to ensure compliance with a certain minimum standard.
It does, but Mohammed Khan, it is this argument that has stifled, I take your point, but it is this argument, Mohammed Khan, that has stifled Indian industry for years and decades. We keep talking of make in India, we keep talking of manufacturing competitiveness, but it is this argument that you're giving today that has been given since 1946, which is why this is the state of Indian industry. But let me get in the word from Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh, because he's a stakeholder here. Tell us, what is your opposition to this? Why do you believe this is going to, is going to accentuate the hire and fire policy? Because, I'm sure it is in your interest to acknowledge that we need to make Indian industry more competitiveness. I don't need to remind anyone in our panel today that in textiles and apparel exports, our competition is no longer China, but it's Bangladesh and Vietnam. We need to take steps that are going to improve competitiveness of Indian industry. Wouldn't you agree, sir?
Actually, we have 2-3 objections over this issue. One is the way government has introduced this, it is highly objectionable. Instead of consulting tripartite partners, trade unions, finance minister has directly announced it in the floor of parliament. It is highly objectionable, and it's a violation of Convention 144 of ILO, which has been ratified the Indian parliament also. So without consulting, it is trespassing, it is a disgrace to the trade union movement of the country. Stakeholders, government has ignored them. Second one is, it is going to change the characteristic of employment. We had been having a permanent characteristic of employment. This is going to replace the fixed term employment, cannot be substitute of a permanent employment. And again, it is going to damage the industry. The relation between workman and industry, the skill one workers acquires after experience, if you are putting them off after certain period, so their experience, whatever they have gained and by which they are going to produce more, that is also going to finish. So the most important thing which trade unions were demanding, that the amendment should be brought into Contract Labour Regulation Act. Instead of that, government has gone and amended this standing order. This is not the correct way. It is bureaucratic style and it is backdoor entry. It has overlooked the concern of stakeholders and the propaganda that rigid labor laws are coming
Mr.
on the way in the growth of and development of industry. It is absolutely wrong, absolutely propaganda.
Right. Mr. Upadhyay, I'm trying to intervene there because I think you made your remarks on the fact that you're not just perturbed about what has come in, you're also visibly upset about the way it has been done, and we'll discuss that a little later in the show. But to you, Mr. Bhargav, the question is that, a lot has been said about how permanent workers will not be moved to contract labor and all of that. But do you believe there is adequate ring fencing of permanent workers not being converted into the fixed term contract employees? They should not be converted from their permanent status to anything like that. Is there adequate ring fencing?
Yeah.
Mr. Bhargav.
Supriya, I'll answer your last question first, and if you permit, I'll react to the other point. Absolutely, the preamble of this amendment Gazette notification says very clearly that no employer of an industrial rating shall convert the posts of the permanent workforce existing in the industrial establishment as on the date into fixed term employment. So it's categorical. Incidentally, in the first draft which was circulated, this aspect was not there. Trade unions raised it, and I would disagree with my good friend Vijesh, with whom I have worked very closely, and the other gentleman who said there was a tripartite call. There was a tripartite meeting in which we sat in the Ministry of Labour and Employment. Yes, technically he is right that it was put up in the finance bill, which perhaps was procedurally wrong, but the Ministry of Labour and Employment, Supriya and Sandeep, went through this complete ritual and the complete protocol. We gave our opinion as industry association, trade unions gave, some walked out. So there was a process of consideration and so on. And to the limited point that has been said that this will legitimize hire and fire, frankly, if I can be brutally honest with you, today industry does hire and fire with contract workers. When we have seasonality in the business, under the existing law, if we were to take them on our payrolls after 180, 240 days, they become deemed permanent. So what do? Honest, straightforward industry, we tell a contractor, a ठेकेदार comes, gives us the people, and we discontinue when the need is not there. So hire and fire is any case happening, not because we like it, but because the business cycle, business dynamics, seasonality, one-time contract, project require flexibility. There is nothing vulgar about flexibility. What this is going to do, and this is very important, this is not a substitute for permanent workforce. This is a substitute for contract labor. Contract workers, I dare say, and we are a party to it, is one of the most abused, exploited, uncared for, lawaris set of employees in an organization. Trade unions take care of permanent workforce. Government takes care of apprentices. ये जो contract workers हैं, उनका कोई माँ बाप नहीं है. They're really. What it says now, that if I were to take, instead of a contract worker fixed term, look at the wordings. His hours of work, incidentally they should say his and his, her. His hours of work, wages, allowances and other benefits shall not be less than that of a permanent workman. None of us pay to a contract labor equivalent or permanent. He shall be available for all statutory benefits available to a permanent workforce proportionately, and mark the words, according to the length of service, if the length of service rendered by him, even if the period of employment does not extend to the qualifying period required in the job. So if I were to give gratuity which is applicable after 5 years, what they are saying is
it has to be
18
proportionate.
months or a 2-year fixed term employment equivalent of gratuity pro rata I need to give.
Okay, I take that point.
This is formalizing, legitimizing what is going wrong.
I think you made a very important point. You're saying that this doesn't replace permanent workers. Let me interrupt you and get another word. You're saying this doesn't replace permanent workers. What it does is it legitimizes the way contractual labor is happening in industry. It's a very important point you made. But Mr. Ghosh, comment on that. Fixed term, like it was pointed out, fixed term workers will be entitled to all benefits like wages, allowances, other statutory benefits that are applicable to permanent workers. So what is this brouhaha all about?
So this is what I was saying. This is what I was saying, that the standing orders act and rules, and there is a schedule in that in 1A. In the schedule earlier there were 6 classification of workers. Now they have added a 7th. So it is not something that is so revolutionary that one would feel either threatened or very thrilled. So either ways, I think it is a small step. I think it is a step in the right direction, but as I was saying earlier, there a lot more requires to be done in order to make both a balanced approach, that there should be workers' security on the one hand and investor confidence on the other.
Okay, Mr. Ghosh makes the point about investor confidence versus worker security, but Mr. Upadhyay, I will come to you, and the point that Mr. Bhargav made was very simple and perhaps puts things in perspective as well, that there is actually, contract labor ka koi mai baap nahi hai. There is nobody who's looking after the interest of contract laborers, and at least in this case, their interests will be taken care of finally. They will not be these headless chickens that are not taken care of. Don't you agree with this? Because it narrows the difference between the contract workers initially and permanent labor and all of that.
Oh, okay. That's why all the trade unions, we are demanding that amendments should be brought in Contract Labor Regulation Act, not in the standing order. This could have been substituted or near to objective what industry and B people wants. The terminology he has used, there is no my bap of contract workers, it is absolutely correct. That's why we wanted to remove the middleman from this arena, and this could have been done by amending the Contract Labor Act, not providing this standing order amendment. It is absolutely going to damage the characteristic of the employment. Whatever arguments are coming up, you see, if you go down on the field, you will find that no rule have any mean to the end user or end beneficiary. For workers, for a mazdoor, these all rules have no relevance, no meaning to them. Industries are so powerful and government is with the industry. They both two are playing together, and ultimately the human aspect, the common man, the mazdoor, they are at sufferer. Government itself is bypassing. As Pradeep ji has told that it is all because of industry needs something and they are not getting because of the rigid rules. I don't find any rules are so rigid that industry can't address. Industries are so powerful, they can mend, they can amend, and they are doing in their favor whenever they want and the way they want. So it is not this sustainable argument.
Okay,
And
I take your point.
Europe, where studies show that fixed term employment brought unemployment there.
Okay.
Unemployment has increased in the Europe and other countries.
Okay, I take your point. I'm not so sure if this industry is in hand in glove with this government. If it was, probably, the state of the economy would be something else. But I take your point, and there are specific cases with regards to labor laws where I think the government has backtracked on proposals. We'll come to that in a bit. But let me take it to Narendra Taneja. And I think the one clause that I'm a little worried about, Narendra Taneja, even though we believe that it's pro-industry, pro-reform, and it's a welcome step. Do you believe the notification is harsh when it comes to termination? The termination clause, the fact that now employers can terminate these employment just by giving reasons in writing. Isn't that unfair to temporary workers? You need to be working continuously for a period of 3 months, for you to get a notice of just 15 days before you get laid off. Is that a little unfair to temporary workers? Narendra Taneja.
Oh, there might. First of all, there might be minor points here or there. You or some of the people might disagree with, but at the same time, the very nature when you say fixed term, so there has to be a kind of exit clause there. You have to have something which suggests that in case you want a worker to exist, there has to be some mechanism. I think that's how one should look at it. And let's not forget one thing. Like my friend from Mr. Upadhyay suggesting that government is hand in glove with the industry and so on. But majority of people have been asking and seeking such changes. I wouldn't really call any big reforms. Such changes are the people from the SME sector. 90% of Indian companies are basically small companies. And many of them are just not in a position even if they want to be hand in glove with anybody for that matter, except God probably. So now I think we have to understand and take it in the right spirit. That there have been thorough consultations as protocols require. It's not that Mr. Upadhyay is saying no consultation. That's not true. There were thorough consultations. And at the same time, government has also gone by the experience of apparel industry, which has been going on for a long time and has seen major shifts and major changes. So government has taken that experience and just extended to other sectors. That's all. That's what has been done. But at the same time, as he said, that you have to look at the spirit. The spirit is basically, to create more job opportunities for the people that we care for, the workers and youth and farmers and the poor. That's the whole idea. Now the question is, whenever you bring about a change, especially a change after such a long time, you find that people are criticizing. I can understand when Congress spokesperson criticize, because they will criticize anything that we do. So I can, that's a different matter. So I don't want to waste my time on that. But the point is that, when you look at the kind of culture we are promoting, on the one hand, security, social welfare, coming out with number of schemes, and at the same time, entrepreneurship. The same people, we have got millions and millions of people now who are now become industrious entrepreneurs. So they are very happy about this thing. But just I want to assure you one thing, that our heart and our efforts are with the workers first and foremost.
Okay. I think anybody in the government will say that. You can't say anything else, it will be suicidal. But Mr. Ghosh, coming to you, the IL, and before I go across to Mohammad Khan for a quick rebuttal, I will take this question with you, Mr. Ghosh. The ILO says that the number of unemployed people in India is expected to rise from 18.3 million in 2017 to 18.6 million in 2018 and 18.9 million by 2019. Do you believe these reforms perhaps are coming in a tad too late, and will these help arresting those numbers now?
Well, in a sense, they are coming late for this government because it has 1 year more to go. So I think the opportunity is a case of missed opportunity in a way, because if they had to do it, they could have done it a little earlier and taken everybody along. The other issue is that as Mr. Upadhyay has been saying about consultations, and I think there is a point there that although the protocol may have been observed, but the fact that major stakeholders feel that they have not been fully consulted is something of a worry, because not only the ILO convention on tripartite consultations demand that there should be full and complete consultation on all issues, but perceptions matter in these cases, where one major stakeholder being listened to, their demands are not being taken on board. It is not going to really it is not going to really cut much ice.
Okay.
So I think that factor must be taken into consideration.
Okay, the manner of introduction and not having taken all parties sort of with them is something that probably was not very desirable, but I think the reform as such is probably long overdue. But Mohammad Khan, I want you to react to all the points made by the other panelists, but I have a quick follow-up on that to you as well. Will the Congress party now, in terms of next steps, support the Industrial Relations Bill, for example, that seeks to ensure better packages for fired staff and longer notice period by unions before announcing strikes? I'm trying to understand, is the Congress party going to be pro-industry, pro-growth, pro-moves towards job creation? Because I know that the Congress party never loses an opportunity to point at this government's poor record when it comes to job creation. So will it support moves that enable job creation?
See, Sandeep, any government, any regulator, any legislator has two things that they must consider. They can't legislate for one constituency. They can't legislate only for industrialists and industrial concerns. They have to, and this is the unenviable task of policy making, you have to come up with a law that balances competing interests. The problem with this law, and it has emerged so far from this debate, that the entire text seems to be one-sided. You yourself pointed out the termination clause. I also referred to that. That is what is going to cause a lot of insecurity. The fact that I think Mr. Pradeep presented a very nice summary of the opposing sides' arguments. And I would agree, what this law does is essentially it legitimizes contract labor below a certain period. That is not desirable just because it is happening and these people are being exploited in such a fashion. The very fact that it's now embodied and authorized by a law isn't a good enough argument. I think what they should have done is, if they had promised greater benefits to these workers, if they had promised inviolability of contract, for example, okay, you will work for 12 months, no one can fire you during that duration, you will also get health benefits, provident fund benefits, and 6 months ke liye after that, you will have attendant benefits. But none of that found its way into the draft. The draft at this stage is one-sided. The BJP spokesperson is unable to give you any details whatsoever. He's talking about airy-fairy stuff that has no bearing on the topic at hand. What you will do, what you plan on doing is meaningless. The fact is, on this date, this decision seems to have been taken hurriedly, without consultation, and merely to arrive at some sort of, some sort of a desperate measure to demonstrate that we are trying to do something towards job creation. I think it doesn't go far enough to satisfy industry. It doesn't go far enough to satisfy the labor unions. I think, as usual, it is an example of poor drafting.
All right, an example of poor, pathetic drafting is the word from the Congress party. But Mr. Bhargav, before I take a breather, I have to ask you this question, and just to give a sense to our viewers of how the rules have been all along in the labour sector. The Industrial Disputes Act of 1947 has a Chapter 5B, which mandates prior approval of any appropriate government before layoffs if an entity employs more than 100 people. The government proposed to extend that to 300 people, but then, of course, under political pressure, it backtracked. As someone who represents Indian industry, has that been a disappointment?
I would be honest in saying, yes, there is a sense of disappointment, because who wants to wind up an industry? Only under duress, only under thing. People set up industry not to wind them up. So if there is a compelling economic competitive reason, then 100, 300, the reality, Supriya, is that even if it is within 100, 300, the government takes inordinate time in approving that, even if it's within the limit. So we can understand the political compulsions, we can understand. Yes, there is a sense of disappointment, but I'll be equally consistent in saying, hey, we are waiting for a minimum wage bill and act to happen, because we do believe that minimum wages today are not fair. We are looking for a social security bill which has been talked about to become a social security act, because we believe the social security is not enough. The job security in today's technological fast changing world is a myth beyond a point, even for the industrialist. Which technology, job? I think we need to bring dignity, social security and equity and fair wages to as long as there is a job. And I would honestly tell you, yes, we are disappointed that these labor laws have taken, and in that context, if I take the liberty, people are talking about amending Contract Labour Act. We know what it takes to amend anything in our parliament. I think it was very smart on part of the Ministry of Labour that they went and amended rules, which is giving us the same advantage of having fixed term employment and converting our contract labour, which would have taken Contract Labour Act amendment would have taken years. And ma'am, lastly, it's said I'm not good at political rhetoric. It's a jugalbandi of government and industry. Believe me, for every contract labour I replace with a fixed term employment, the cost will go up by 30 to 40%. It's going to cost the industry. The biggest cost it will cause is to the government, which has large number of contract labour. They'll have to put them into. So both industry and government, if you ask me honestly, are going to be economically a major setback to them. But we believe, those who want to believe in the law believe it's the right thing to do. Those who don't want to believe in the law, 100% contract workers, well, law doesn't mean a thing to them. So I'm saying this is going to cost us. I'm going to have a challenge in convincing my industry colleagues, ये करिएगा क्योंकि ये आपके लिए और वर्कर के लिए उचित है. And they'll say, Arey, I'm very happy with my contract labor thing. I can hire, fire, I can pay minimum wages. Now you're going to ask me to pay everything equivalent to my permanent workers. It's not easy, ma'am, but I think it's the right thing to do.
Okay, fair enough. So you believe that the government has done
absolutely the right thing to do.
Okay, and you believe that the government has done a balancing act, keeping in mind the interests of industry. The industry takes the hit on some clauses, and of course, it's also listened to some of the key concerns of industry. I tell you what, this is a fascinating debate. Not very often that you'll see the Congress party and a union that's aligned to the RSS agree on a topic, but such is Indian polity. We'll slip into a short break here on the India development debate, but on the other side, we're going to talk about the road ahead. What next? Now that this has been drafted, what next? What are the other steps that we need to look at in terms of labour reforms? We'll ask our panels, how much is the government willing to invest its political capital on when it comes to labour reforms? We'll question that in just a few minutes right here on the India development debate. Back with ET now. This is the India development debate, the only debate on national television that puts the spotlight on development issues. And tonight we're talking about labour reforms, the lack of them in the past and the road ahead from here on. Mr. Ghosh, I know you've largely believed that this is not enough, this is very little, and there's much ado about nothing. Let's talk about the road ahead. What else needs to be done? And you know, what people are eagerly awaiting is the move in some sense to consolidate 44 central labor laws into 4 codes that has been talked about a while. Help us understand, you know, how big is that change going to be, and why do you believe is it still getting delayed?
Well, basically, you know, it is a change in the right direction in terms of rationalizing, in terms of simplification. So it's a good change that is likely to happen. But as I was saying that I think the time has gone by. Now it's just too late in the day to expect, and given the political situation as we can see unfolding from day to day, how are we going to have any kind of consensus on major changes like this? Now, just to go back a little, we were talking about prior permission under the Industrial Disputes Act, Chapter 5B. Now, that is, if we say a big bang reform, that is going to be a big bang reform. But is the government capable of you know, taking that road? I have serious doubts now, particularly, I mean, at a certain point in time, I was saying that this government, the type of majority it had, there was no better opportunity than this to really, you know, plunge to the core of the problem. But really speaking, they have lost out on time, and just to give one you know, example is that when Chapter 5B was introduced, that was in 1976, just after the emergency. And so therefore, before the emergency was declared, there was no Chapter 5B and there was no prior permission clause. And when it was introduced in 1976, the cutoff point was 300 workers. Later in 1984, that was further restricted to 100 workers requiring prior permission for layoff, retrenchment and closure. So, over the years there has been more and more restrictive labor laws. Tackle it you know, in a fulsome way, that I think in this, particularly this tenure of government, I think now it is a little too late in the day. If there is another occasion, you know, another time, maybe that this should be really looked at.
Right, Mr. Ghosh, I'm just going to take forward the point that you made about restrictive labor laws. And Mr. Upadhyay, if I may ask you, you represent the labor unions here. You know, many people believe existing labor laws like the Industrial Disputes Act, the Industrial Employment Act, the Trade Union Act actually come in the way of job creation and act as a disincentive to expand, to create jobs. Several of these laws actually kick in only above a certain threshold of employment levels. How are you going to defend the charge about restrictive labor laws?
Actually, it is totally misleading propaganda. Rajasthan government sometime in July 2014, they have amended all the laws including this Chapter 5B, and argument was that time that the Rajasthan government will get maximum investment and lot of employment will come. And what happened after these 3-4 years, whatever was being propagated, the agenda whatever was being pushed before, I think the result is net zero. There is no increase in the employment in the Rajasthan. There is no enhancement in the investment in the Rajasthan. So if really these rules were on the way, why Rajasthan government could not get all these things? So there are number of studies, various committees, various research institute has gone into detail, and they are of the conclusion that there are, if 10 obstacles are there, labor laws doesn't fall under that 10 category. There are number of issues which is coming on the way in the development of the industry. As a trade union, we are very much of the view, if any of the labor law coming up on the way in the development of industries, we are coming forward to say this must be amended. But I am asking, anyone should come forward and convince us which lies coming on the way really. It is totally misleading.
okay,
It is just a motivated issue being
okay, I take that point, Mr.
unnecessarily
Upadhyay.
it is being
Okay,
brought.
you are saying it's a
No
motivated
labor
issue.
law is coming on the way to
Create jobs. I
prohibit
take your point. Let me get a
development
word
of
from
industries.
Mr. Bhargav. Let's hear the industry's view. We've heard your point of view. Mr. Bhargav, here we have a union representative making a compelling case on why labor reforms actually don't create jobs. He's pointing to the example of Rajasthan and saying that even though Section 21B was dropped in the state of Rajasthan and enabled companies with up to 300, to increase the threshold to 300 from 100, yet it hasn't created, significantly more jobs. How do you respond to that point made there, sir?
I would very humbly and honestly agree with Mr. Upadhyay that there are many more challenges. Labor laws sometimes come in the way, but fundamentally our challenges are others in terms of going ahead with investment and job creation. One thing I would want to say, simplification, rationalization, electronic, e-filing, all these are irritations. They don't create jobs, but they don't create investment. But those are the ones which come in ease of doing business. There, I think this government has taken a view. But here, let's understand, like the sales tax, it's a state, not only a political dispute between different parties, it is state and center. And that is where I think there is a need for a connect between all of them to be able to encourage. To your pointed question, what is coming in the way of creating jobs? What is it coming in the way of investment? Frankly, if I were to put 3, 4, 5 reasons, labor laws will come later. I think we have other challenges with us which are coming in the way of getting into a thing. And incidentally, we all look at job creation in terms of the formal sector. In today's economy, in the new emerging economy, employment generation in formal sector is only one part. Engagement of people into activities, a guy delivering pizza or somebody delivering from Shoppers Stop, from a Flipkart, those are jobs that are being created, we don't even count them. So really speaking, the situation is not as grim as sometimes we want to project by looking at the official data. There is an engagement, there is a livelihood generation and not necessarily the job generation. Yes, we need to do, and believe me, I think we need to do something on minimum wages. We need to do something on social security. Those are things which are hurting.
Okay.
But in terms of 100, 300, beyond the point, I don't think it matters.
Yeah. Mr. Bhargav, you're right there. I think enough needs to be done on social security, minimum wages and all of that, but that's another debate. Mr. Naren Taneja, I'll ask you a little bit of an uncomfortable question there as far as your party is concerned. Now, the rule book and the statute says that states can use Article 254(2) of the Constitution to amend labor laws, get an assent by the President, something like a state like Rajasthan has done. Madhya Pradesh hasn't done it. A lot of the other BJP states haven't done it. Now, given that you have a government in 21 states of the country, what has stopped you from passing it everywhere? And letting go of this heartburn that one sees when you do it centrally. Why are the other states not following suit where there are BJP governments?
Very simple, because all states, when they go to the people, they come out with their own manifesto. They may be part of BJP, they are BJP, but they are elected on a different manifesto. So manifestos are local, their objectives are all local. Yes, BJP, but the state BJP in Rajasthan has a different manifesto, different agenda, different commitment to the people than BJP in Madhya Pradesh or BJP in Goa or BJP in Uttarakhand or BJP in Tripura. That's how democracy and that's how the federal structure works. So they have done it in Rajasthan. Other governments can take a cue from that, or they probably take it from somewhere else. So that's how it works. You see, the bigger point is, and we need to understand, I fully appreciate and respect what people say, but at the same time we have to understand that job per se is linked directly with the size of the economy. Our focus is on expanding the economy. When you expand the economy and make it easy for people who are in business to come and invest in this country, both domestic and foreign investors, that basically leads to opportunities. And they need people, and that is what is called basically employment or jobs. And similarly, like my friend from the Congress party, he was saying that they have some issues, they would like to add 1 or 2 layer more to the decision taken by us on this issue. They are most welcome to do it in the state that they rule. In Punjab, they can do it. In Karnataka, they do it. Instead of coming on TV channel, basically questioning my knowledge and my integrity. The question is, sometime when Mr. Khan speaks, I have my serious doubts if he is speaking on behalf of the party, because party's message, if I get it wrong, if got it right in the economic resolution, is very compatible what we have done. But he is talking his own, probably those are his personal opinion. Because party's message, if I got it right, is very compatible what we are trying to do.
Ask that question.
And don't forget, they were the one
I
who
take that
introduced
point and we asked.
in 1991.
Okay, Narendra Taneja, I take that point, and to be fair, we asked that question to Mohammad Khan. He responded to that as well. But I don't want to make it political. I just got a few minutes left on the show. Mohammad Khan, and again, let's not make this political. I'm trying to understand really. This is a tricky issue. This is a critical issue, and we've seen very polarized views in this debate. We've heard the view of the industry. We've heard the view of labor unions, and we've heard the view of an expert as well who feels this is not enough. Even more needs to be done. How do we find a middle ground? How do political parties set aside their political differences, set aside their political agendas, and arrive at a common ground on issues like this, on labor reforms, on land reforms? This is what is stifling Indian industry. This is what is stifling growth, because it doesn't matter which political party is in power today. It's BJP today, it could be Congress tomorrow, it could be the left. But the fact of the matter is, as a country, we need to move forward on these issues.
Understood. See, building political consensus, building a bipartisanship, reaching across the aisle, building bipartisan ties is a subject of debate in itself, especially where this government is concerned. I think one of the areas they should have focused on, because it was a low-hanging fruit, is the resolution of labor disputes. That is something that they did not do. This is something that the trade unions have also been asking them. To give you an overview, right now, if you are a laborer, or if you're a temporary worker, or if you're a contract worker, you have very limited recourse. You can go to the labor courts, which in Delhi are housed in Karkaduma and Dwarka. You can go to the labor commissioner, or you can go under the industrial disputes tribunal. These remedies take so long that these people who are aggrieved by actions of the company or the industrialists experience what is known as litigation fatigue. They simply can't afford to come to court and see these litigations through. So they peter away. The other option is they go and file winding up proceedings against the company, which brings the proceedings of the company to a standstill. We've seen this in the case of companies in Bengal, in Karnataka. That doesn't benefit anyone. You had a golden opportunity to bring about systematic reforms for the resolution of disputes. Why do strikes and lockouts happen? Because there is no other viable alternative. That is my concluding statement, and I will also end by saying I may often on occasion question Mr. Taneja's knowledge, but I can never question his integrity. I know him far better than that. Thank you.
All right, you guys should all get together for tea, coffee or whatever may and make your peace with it. Television debates don't really give you an opportunity to do that. But a quick last question to you, Mr. Bhargav, and as somebody who represents Indian industry, you may turn around and say that the government has used its political capital to push through labor reforms. Are you hopeful land could be next, or is it too politically contentious for them to even think about it?
I would say all political parties, all states have demonstrated unified approach in the case of GST. Sales tax was a very sensitive, politically sensitive, state-oriented, my domain-oriented, they did it. I personally believe that some core issues of labor laws, whether it's minimum wages, some social security, etc., should be perceived not as concurrent subject, but come to a consensus and drive it as a national. Because when I set a factory, today I'm flustered because I have plants in 4 different states. And I deal with as though they are 4 different countries. So I'm just making a point that this very political entities have demonstrated unison when it came to a national cause called GST. I do believe that in the next avatar of the next parliament or whatever you want to say, we should say that labor laws, 80% of them would be uniform, because minimum wages, the needs of the people, everything is common. It doesn't matter whether it's Tripura or Delhi. Absolutely. And I'm confident.
I couldn't agree more with you there, Mr. Bhargav. We have to find, on issues like labor reforms, we need to find common ground, we need to find broader political consensus, and we need to make it work for the workers as much as it needs to work for industry. It can't be tailor-made to just suit the needs of industry. It needs to work for workers as well. They need to embrace these reforms as well, because in the larger interest, it is going to aid competitiveness of Indian industry. It's going to aid India's growth, and there's nothing frankly more important than that. I can't thank this wonderful panel enough for joining us with such a diverse viewpoint and with their perspective. and joining us in this edition of the India Development Debate.
Thank you very much, our stellar panel, for being with us and always up for a good discussion as far as this debate is concerned. Thanks very much for joining in. To the viewers, keep it with ET Now, because Top 10 at 10 comes up next with Tanya Bharadwaj.